After 26 years of loyalty, my boss Marcus fired me and called my revolutionary software idea impossible nonsense. But while he was busy stealing my work and dragging me through court, that same worthless concept just generated $3 million in revenue and completely destroyed his career. When he came crawling back begging for mercy, I had to make the hardest decision of my life. But could I really trust the man who tried to destroy everything I'd built? The security guard's radio crackled as I walked through Wayne Enterprises' glass doors for what I didn't know would be the last time. 26 years of arriving at 7:30 sharp, and today felt different. My software proposal sat in my briefcase like a ticking bomb, ready to either save this company millions or blow up my entire career. Marcus Kane stood by the elevator, his tailored suit making him look more like a politician than a manager. He'd been my boss for 3 years, ever since the company promoted him over me. Despite my 2 decades of experience, the bitter taste of that decision still lingered every morning when I had to report to someone I'd trained from day one. "Morning, Alan," he said without looking up from his phone. "Hope you're ready for today's board meeting. Some of us have real solutions to present." His words hit like ice water, but I kept my voice steady. "My supply chain software is ready for review. The beta tests show it could cut costs by 40%. Marcus finally looked at me, his eyes cold and dismissive. "Your little computer game? We'll see what the board thinks about fairy tales." The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt like ascending to my own execution. Marcus hummed softly while I clutched my briefcase, knowing that inside was either my ticket to the top or my walking papers. The doors opened to reveal the boardroom where 12 executives sat around a polished table, their faces already showing the boredom of another routine meeting. "Gentlemen," Marcus announced as we entered, "Alan here wants to share his impossible dream with us today." My presentation began smoothly enough. Charts showed potential savings, graphs displayed efficiency improvements, and my voice remained calm despite the knot in my stomach. But halfway through explaining the algorithm's core function, Marcus interrupted with a loud laugh. "Stop right there," he said, standing up dramatically. "This is exactly the kind of thinking that's holding Wayne Enterprises back. While our competitors are making real progress, we're listening to pipe dreams from someone who's been stuck in the same position for over 2 decades. The room went silent. Board members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, and I felt my face burning with embarrassment. But instead of anger, something colder settled in my chest. The calm that comes before a storm. "Marcus," I said quietly, "this software works. I've tested it on our current supply chain data, and the results speak for themselves." "Results?" Marcus pulled out his own folder, thick with documents I'd never seen before. "Let me show you some real results." Alan's productivity reports from the past year, his missed deadlines, his resistance to new company initiatives. My heart pounded as he distributed papers that painted me as a failing employee. Every minor delay, every time I'd questioned a bad decision, every moment I'd chosen thorough work over rushed results, all twisted into evidence of incompetence. "These reports are misleading," I began, but Marcus cut me off again. "The facts don't lie, Alan, and neither do performance reviews." He held up another document. "Your direct reports have complained about your outdated methods and inability to adapt to modern business practices." The betrayal hit harder than any physical blow. Those performance reviews contained conversations I'd had in confidence with team members, twisted and rewritten to make me look incompetent. Marcus had been building a case against me for months, maybe years, but I'd learned something important during my 26 years at Wayne Enterprises. Always keep records. My phone sat in my pocket, recording everything, just as it had been during every interaction with Marcus for the past 6 months. His own words about sabotaging my projects, his admissions of blocking my promotions, his crude jokes about older employees, all captured in digital clarity. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said, pulling out my phone and setting it on the table. Perhaps we should review some other conversations before making any decisions. Marcus's face went pale as he recognized the device. The board members leaned forward, suddenly very interested in what I might have recorded. The power dynamic in the room shifted, like a fault line cracking open. "You can't record private conversations," Marcus sputtered, but his legal knowledge was as weak as his management skills. "Actually," said Jennifer Walsh, the company's legal counsel, "Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state. If Alan was part of these conversations, the recordings are perfectly legal." The next 20 minutes changed everything. Marcus's voice filled the boardroom, describing his plans to force out older employees, his admission that he'd deliberately sabotaged projects to make himself look better, and his crude commentary about several female colleagues. The board members' expressions grew darker with each revelation. "Enough," said Chairman Stewart, the eldest member of the board. "Marcus, you're suspended, pending a full investigation. Alan, we owe you an apology and a serious conversation about your software proposal." But Marcus wasn't finished. As security escorted him from the building, he stopped at my desk and leaned close enough that only I could hear his whispered threat. "This isn't over, Alan. I've got friends in every major company in this city, and I'll make sure you never work in tech again. Your precious software will die with your career, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." His words should have scared me, but instead they lit a fire I hadn't felt in years. 26 years of playing by corporate rules, of being the reliable team player, of accepting other people's limitations, all of that ended in that moment. That night, I sat in my home office staring at my computer screen. The software Marcus had called impossible was right there, lines of code that could revolutionize how companies managed their supply chains. Wayne Enterprises might give me a promotion and a raise, but they'd never truly understand what I'd created. My wife Sarah brought me coffee and sat on the arm of my chair. "So what happens now?" I looked at the resignation letter I'd been writing, then at the business plan I'd sketched out on a napkin. Wayne Enterprises thought they owned me, but they were about to learn the difference between loyalty and ownership. "Now," I said, saving both documents, "I'm going to show Marcus Kane what impossible really looks like." The coffee shop on 5th Street buzzed with morning energy as I waited for Diana Prince, my lawyer and the only person at Wayne Enterprises who'd ever truly understood my vision. She'd left the company 2 years ago to start her own practice, and right now she was my only hope of fighting Marcus's promised revenge. Diana slid into the booth across from me, her briefcase landing with a heavy thud that suggested she'd brought serious ammunition to this meeting. Her expression was grim, but her eyes held the sharp focus of someone ready for battle. "It's worse than you thought," she said without preamble, pulling out a stack of documents. "Marcus didn't wait for his suspension to end. He's been busy." The papers she spread across the table made my blood run cold. Non-compete agreements I'd never seen before, bearing my forged signature. Patent applications for my software filed under Marcus's name 3 days after his suspension. Letters to competing companies warning them that I was unstable and potentially dangerous. "He can't do this," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew how naive they sounded. "He already has," Diana replied, flipping to another page. "Queen Industries received a formal complaint yesterday, claiming you've been stealing trade secrets and selling them to competitors. Stone Corporation got a similar letter along with a detailed psychological evaluation suggesting you're having a mental breakdown. The psychological evaluation was the cruelest blow. Marcus had taken every stress-related doctor's visit from my employee health records, every mention of working long hours or feeling overwhelmed, and woven them into a narrative of mental instability. To an outside company, I looked like a corporate spy having a nervous breakdown. "There's more?" Diana continued, her voice getting angrier with each revelation. "He's also filed for emergency injunctions in 3 different courts, claiming your software contains proprietary Wayne Enterprises Code. Even if we prove he's lying, the legal fees will bankrupt you before we get to trial. I stared at the documents, feeling like I was drowning in Marcus's calculated cruelty. 26 years of clean employment records, of honest work and loyal service, destroyed by someone who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to his own ambitions. But Diana wasn't finished. She pulled out her laptop and turned it toward me, showing a social media profile I'd never seen before. My name, my photo, but filled with extremist political posts and inappropriate comments about former colleagues. He created fake accounts, she explained. LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, all designed to make you look unstable and unprofessional. Any company that searches your name online will find this garbage instead of your real achievements. The scope of Marcus's revenge was breathtaking in its thoroughness. He hadn't just attacked my software or my reputation. He'd systematically destroyed every path I might take to rebuild my career. The man I'd trained, whose early mistakes I'd covered, whose successes I'd supported, had become my most dedicated enemy. How long has he been planning this? I asked. Diana's expression grew even darker. Based on the timestamps and file creation dates, he started building this case against you over 18 months ago, long before your software presentation, long before the board meeting. He's been planning to destroy you since the day he became your supervisor. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Every friendly conversation, every collaborative project, every moment I'd thought we were working toward the same goals, Marcus had been plotting my downfall the entire time. I'd been fighting a war without knowing it, and my enemy had already won every battle. But here's what Marcus doesn't know, Diana said, closing the laptop and leaning forward, conspiratorially. I've been digging into his background since yesterday, and our boy genius has some very interesting secrets. She produced another folder, this one stamped with official seals and legal letterheads. Inside were financial records, court documents, and employment histories that painted a very different picture of Marcus Kane. He's done this before, she explained. 3 times, actually. Atlanta, Chicago, and Denver, same pattern every time. He gets hired as a manager, identifies the most talented employees, steals their work, and then destroys their careers to cover his tracks. The documents told a story of systematic corporate fraud spanning over a decade. In Atlanta, Marcus had stolen a marketing algorithm from a senior analyst and used it to land his next job. In Chicago, he'd sabotaged a product launch to make his predecessor look incompetent. In Denver, he'd embezzled research funds and blamed it on his department head. How did he get away with it? I asked. Powerful friends, sealed settlements, and a talent for reinventing himself, Diana replied. But he made a mistake this time. He went after someone with 26 years of documentation and the patience to build a real case. She was right. Unlike his previous victims, I'd kept detailed records of every project, every conversation, every decision that had led to this moment. My computer at home contained backup files of every email, every performance review, every piece of evidence that proved Marcus's pattern of sabotage and theft. We're going to destroy him, Diana said with quiet certainty. But not through the courts. That's exactly what he wants. We're going to beat him where it hurts most, in the marketplace. Her plan was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its potential impact. Instead of fighting Marcus's legal games, we'd bypass them entirely. My software was clean, developed entirely on my own time with my own resources. Wayne Enterprises had no legitimate claim to it, regardless of what Marcus's forged documents claimed. We incorporate immediately, she explained. File for our own patents, establish prior art, and get your software to market before Marcus can stop us. Once you have paying customers and documented success, his lies become irrelevant. But the real genius of Diana's strategy wasn't legal, it was psychological. Marcus had built his entire reputation on stealing other people's work and destroying their careers. if I succeeded. Despite his sabotage, if my impossible software thrived in the marketplace, it would expose him as the fraud he'd always been. There's just one problem, I said, already knowing what she was going to say. Money, Diana confirmed. Starting a tech company requires capital we don't have, and Marcus has made sure no traditional investors will touch you. We need to find another way. That's when I remembered something Marcus had said during one of our recorded conversations, something about Wayne Enterprises' upcoming merger with Atlantic Corp and how certain information about their supply chain inefficiencies could be worth millions to the right people. What if we didn't need investors? I asked. What if the software could fund itself? Diana raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? I pulled out my phone and showed her the beta testing results I'd run on Wayne Enterprises' supply chain data. The potential savings were staggering, not just the 40% I'd presented to the board, but closer to 60% when fully implemented. Every major corporation is struggling with supply chain optimization, I explained. They're throwing millions at consultants who can't deliver what I've already built. If we can prove the concept with just one major client, word will spread faster than Marcus can contain it. The plan that emerged over the next hour was ambitious, risky, and completely dependent on my ability to deliver results that Marcus had declared impossible. We target companies that were desperate enough to take risks, demonstrate the software's capabilities through free trials, and build a client base before Marcus could marshal his legal and financial resources against us. It could work, Diana admitted, but you'll need a team. Software development, marketing, customer service. You can't do this alone. That's when I smiled for the first time since this nightmare began. Marcus wasn't the only one who'd been planning for months. The team I needed was scattered across Wayne Enterprises. Talented people who'd been passed over for promotions, ignored for raises, or simply tired of working for a company that valued politics over performance. Let me make some calls, I said, already mentally drafting the messages that would either launch my company or confirm Marcus's victory. As Diana packed up her files, she paused and looked at me with something approaching admiration. You know, most people would have given up by now. Marcus has built a pretty convincing case that you're finished. I thought about that as I walked back to my car, Marcus's threats echoing in my memory, alongside Diana's encouragement. 26 years of corporate loyalty had taught me patience, documentation, and the value of long-term thinking. Marcus had used those same years to perfect his skills at sabotage and theft. But he'd made one critical mistake in his calculations. He'd assumed that destroying my reputation would destroy my resolve, that isolating me professionally would leave me powerless to fight back. Instead, his betrayal had freed me from the very corporate constraints that had held me back for over 2 decades. My phone buzzed with the first response to my recruitment messages. Then another. And another. By the time I reached home, 7 former Wayne Enterprises employees had agreed to meet with me, each one carrying their own stories of Marcus's sabotage and their own reasons for wanting revenge. Marcus thought he'd won by destroying my career, but he'd actually given me something much more valuable, absolutely nothing left to lose. The garage door slammed shut behind Victor Stone as he stormed into our makeshift headquarters, his laptop bag hitting the concrete floor with a crash that made everyone look up from their work. His face was red with anger, and the vein in his forehead pulsed like it might explode at any second. They got to Dataflow Industries, he announced, his voice shaking with rage. Marcus called their CEO personally this morning. Our biggest potential client just canceled their meeting and threatened to sue us if we contact them again. The silence in my garage was deafening. For 6 weeks, we'd been building Gotham solutions. From nothing, 5 former Wayne Enterprises employees working 18-hour days to prove that my impossible software could revolutionize supply chain management. Dataflow Industries was supposed to be our breakthrough client, the company that would validate everything we'd sacrificed to build. Barry Allen looked up from his marketing materials, his usual optimism replaced by grim reality. That's the 4th client this week. Marcus isn't just blocking us, he's actively destroying every opportunity before we can even present our solution. Arthur Curry pushed back from his desk where he'd been analyzing logistics data for a shipping company that would probably cancel on us tomorrow. How's he doing this? He got fired from Wayne Enterprises 3 months ago. He shouldn't have this kind of influence. Diana Prince, who'd been reviewing legal documents in the corner, finally spoke up with the answer we'd all been dreading. Because he doesn't work alone anymore. I've been tracking his Activities through corporate filings and social media connections. Marcus has partnered with Richmond Associates, the biggest corporate consulting firm on the East Coast. The name hit me like a physical blow. Richmond Associates was legendary in the business world, a company that specialized in corporate warfare and hostile takeovers. They had connections with every major corporation in North America, and their reputation for destroying competitors was matched only by their success rate. Richmond hired Marcus as a senior consultant 2 weeks after Wayne Enterprises fired him. Diana continued, spreading documents across my workbench. They're not just using his connections to block our sales, they're positioning him as the creator of supply chain optimization software. He's stealing credit for your work on a national level. The documentation she gathered was devastating in its thoroughness. Trade publications featuring Marcus as an innovative thought leader. Conference presentations where he demonstrated concepts identical to my software. LinkedIn posts where he discussed his revolutionary approach to supply chain management using language lifted directly from my original proposal to Wayne Enterprises. Look at this, Diana said, pointing to a press release dated just yesterday. Richmond Associates announces their new supply chain excellence division headed by industry pioneer Marcus Kane. They're claiming to have developed breakthrough technology that will transform how companies manage their operations. My 26 years of work reduced to corporate marketing copy under someone else's name. The injustice of it burned in my chest, but underneath the anger was something more dangerous, the cold calculation of someone who'd been pushed too far. There's more, Diana added, her voice dropping to a whisper. They're planning to announce a major client acquisition next week. Stone Corporation signed a $10 million contract for supply chain optimization services using what they believe is Marcus's proprietary software. Victor laughed bitterly. Stone Corporation? They were on our target list. We've been trying to get a meeting with them for 2 months. Now we know why they wouldn't take our calls, Barry said. Marcus convinced them that we're corporate spies trying to steal his intellectual property. The scope of Marcus's betrayal was breathtaking. He hadn't just stolen my software, he'd stolen my entire business model, my client base, and my future. Richmond Associates was positioning him as the next big thing in corporate consulting while we struggled to survive in a garage with borrowed equipment and maxed out credit cards. But something Diana had said stuck in my mind like a splinter. Stone Corporation had signed a $10 million contract for services Marcus couldn't actually deliver. He might have stolen my concepts and presentations, but he didn't have the actual software. The code that made everything work was still locked in my computer, protected by encryption he couldn't break. What happens when Stone Corporation realizes Marcus can't deliver what he promised? I asked. Diana's expression shifted from frustration to something approaching hope. That's an excellent question. Richmond Associates has built their reputation on results, not promises. If Marcus fails to deliver working software, it won't just destroy him, it'll damage Richmond's credibility with every major corporation in the country. The plan that emerged over the next hour was risky beyond belief, but it was also our only chance to beat Marcus at his own game. Instead of continuing to chase clients he could block, we'd focus on the one client he'd already stolen, Stone Corporation. We're going to let Marcus fail, I explained to my team. He's promised Stone Corporation revolutionary supply chain optimization, but he doesn't have the software to deliver it. When his project collapses, we'll be ready with the real solution. Victor shook his head. That's insane. By the time Marcus fails, Stone Corporation will never trust another supply chain consultant. We'll be guilty by association. Not if we approach them correctly, I replied, pulling up Stone Corporation's financial reports on my laptop. Look at their quarterly earnings. They're hemorrhaging money due to supply chain inefficiencies. They didn't hire Marcus because they trusted him, they hired him because they're desperate. The numbers told a story of corporate crisis. Stone Corporation's profits had dropped 30% over the past year, entirely due to supply chain problems that traditional consulting firms couldn't solve. They'd bet $10 million on Marcus because they needed a miracle, not because they believed in his expertise. We document everything, I continued, outlining a strategy that would either vindicate us completely or destroy us beyond recovery. Every promise Marcus makes to Stone Corporation, every deadline he misses, every excuse he offers for why his software isn't working. When he fails, we'll have a complete record of his fraud. Barry's marketing background kicked in as he saw the bigger picture. And when we present the real software to Stone Corporation, we won't just be offering a solution, we'll be exposing the entire consulting industry's biggest fraud. The publicity alone would be worth millions. Diana nodded approvingly. It's brilliant. Marcus has been using Richmond Associates' reputation to steal your work, but reputation cuts both ways. When he fails publicly, Richmond will cut him loose to protect themselves. He'll be radioactive in the consulting world. But Arthur raised the question we were all thinking. What if he doesn't fail? What if Richmond Associates has other people who can build software good enough to fool Stone Corporation? The possibility had occurred to me, but I'd done my homework on Richmond Associates. They were masters of corporate politics and financial manipulation, but they weren't technology innovators. Their success came from repackaging other people's ideas, not creating original solutions. Marcus chose the wrong enemy, I said, remembering the recordings I'd made of his dismissive comments about my technical abilities. He's always seen me as just another corporate drone. Someone who follows orders and accepts limitations. He has no idea what I'm actually capable of when I stop playing by his rules. The next 3 weeks were the most intense of my professional life. While Marcus presented PowerPoint slides to Stone Corporation executives, we worked around the clock to perfect our software. Every feature he promised, we built better. Every efficiency gain he claimed, we exceeded. Every deadline he missed, we documented with screenshots and recorded phone calls. Diana's legal background proved invaluable as she helped us build an airtight case for intellectual property theft. We had timestamps proving when I'd created each piece of code, documentation showing how Marcus had stolen my concepts, and recordings of him admitting that he'd never developed software in his life. But the real breakthrough came when Barry discovered Marcus's fatal mistake. In his eagerness to impress Stone Corporation, he'd shared detailed technical specifications that exactly matched my original software design specifications he could never have created independently. He copied your work so precisely that he included your signature coding style, Barry explained, showing me side-by-side comparisons of Marcus's presentations and my original files. Any software engineer who looks at this will immediately recognize that the same person created both versions. The evidence was overwhelming, but it was also dangerous. If we revealed our hand too early, Marcus would find a way to cover his tracks or shift blame to Richmond Associates. We needed to wait until Stone Corporation discovered his fraud independently, then present ourselves as the solution to their crisis. That opportunity came sooner than expected. Victor's contacts inside Stone Corporation reported that Marcus had missed 3 consecutive deadlines, offering increasingly elaborate excuses for why his revolutionary software wasn't ready for testing. The $10 million project was already 2 months behind schedule, and Stone's executives were demanding answers. They're starting to panic, Victor reported during one of our late-night strategy sessions. Stone's board of directors is asking hard questions about the Richmond Associates contract. Marcus is running out of time and excuses. Diana smiled with predatory satisfaction. Then it's time to make our move. Tomorrow morning, Stone Corporation is going to receive a very interesting package of documents that will answer all their questions about Marcus Kane's revolutionary software. As I watched my team prepare for the final phase of our plan, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: confidence. Marcus had taught me valuable lessons about corporate warfare, but he'd forgotten the most important rule of any conflict: know your enemies' capabilities before you declare war. He'd assumed that destroying my reputation would destroy my spirit, that isolating me professionally would leave me helpless to fight back. Instead, his betrayal had freed me from every constraint that had limited my potential for 26 years. Tomorrow, Stone Corporation would learn the truth about Marcus Kane. But more importantly, they'd discover what real innovation looked like when it came from someone who had absolutely nothing left to lose. The phone rang at 6:30 in the morning, jolting me awake with a sound that meant either victory or complete disaster. Diana's voice was tight with excitement when I answered, but underneath the thrill was an edge of nervousness that made my stomach clench. Stone Corporation just fired Richmond Associates, she announced without preamble. The entire $10 million contract has been terminated for breach of performance. Marcus Kane's career just went up in flames, and he's taking Richmond down with him. I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake despite having worked until 3 in the morning. 4:03. Months we've been building toward this moment, the public exposure of Marcus's fraud and the vindication of everything I'd sacrificed to build Gotham Solutions. What's the reaction? I asked, already knowing that the next few hours would determine whether we'd succeeded or simply destroyed our last chance at survival. Better than we hoped, Diana replied, and I could hear papers rustling as she read from what sounded like official documents. Stone Corporation's legal team is demanding full refunds and threatening criminal fraud charges. But more importantly, their CEO wants to meet with us tomorrow morning to discuss alternative solutions. The irony was perfect. Marcus had stolen my software concepts to land the biggest contract of his career, but his inability to deliver actual working technology had created the exact opportunity we needed to prove our worth. Stone Corporation was desperate, embarrassed, and looking for someone who could actually solve their supply chain problems. Victor called 10 minutes later with even better news. The tech blogs are going crazy, he reported, his voice crackling with excitement. TechCrunch just published a detailed expose about Richmond Associates and their fake software guru. Marcus's LinkedIn profile has been flooded with comments from former colleagues exposing his pattern of stealing other people's work. The public humiliation of Marcus Kane was unfolding faster than we'd anticipated. Social media had amplified our carefully documented evidence into a viral story about corporate fraud and stolen innovation. Every lie he'd told, every career he'd destroyed, every piece of work he'd claimed as his own was being exposed by people who'd been waiting years for this moment. Barry burst into the garage an hour later with printouts of news articles and social media posts that painted a devastating picture of Marcus's downfall. Richmond Associates issued a statement claiming they were deceived by Marcus's credentials, he announced, spreading the papers across our workbench. They're throwing him under the bus to protect their own reputation. The statement was brutal in its efficiency. Richmond Associates had discovered significant discrepancies in Marcus Kane's employment history and serious questions about his claimed technological innovations. They were cooperating fully with Stone Corporation's investigation and had terminated his consulting contract effective immediately. But Diana's next call brought news that changed everything. Marcus isn't going quietly, she warned, her voice carrying a tension that made my blood run cold. He's filed criminal charges against you for corporate espionage and intellectual property theft. He's claiming that you stole Wayne Enterprises' proprietary technology and framed him for fraud. The accusation was so twisted, so perfectly calculated to shift blame away from his own crimes, that I almost admired its audacity. Marcus had stolen my work, lied about his credentials, and defrauded a major corporation, but he was positioning himself as the victim of an elaborate conspiracy. Can he make it stick? I asked, already knowing that truth and justice weren't always the same thing in corporate America. Not with the evidence we have, Diana replied, but her hesitation suggested the legal battle wouldn't be simple. The problem is that criminal charges create publicity he can use to muddy the waters. Even if we prove he's lying, some people will always wonder if there's truth to his accusations. The next 24 hours were a masterclass in corporate crisis management and legal warfare. Marcus appeared on business news programs presenting himself as a whistleblower who'd discovered massive fraud at Wayne Enterprises. He claimed that my software was actually company property, that I'd stolen trade secrets, and that Richmond Associates had been deceived by my elaborate cover-up. His performance was convincing enough to create doubt, especially among people who didn't understand the technical details of software development. Several business publications ran articles questioning whether Marcus Kane was a fraud or a victim, and Stone Corporation's executives began expressing concerns about our upcoming meeting. But Marcus had made one critical error in his desperation to save his reputation. During a live television interview, he demonstrated detailed knowledge of my software's internal architecture, knowledge he could only have gained by studying my stolen work. Every technical specification he mentioned, every algorithm he described matched my original code exactly. He just proved our case on national television, Victor observed as we watched the interview replay online. No legitimate software developer could have independently created code that matches yours so precisely. He's basically confessing to theft while claiming to be innocent. Diana was already preparing our response when Stone Corporation's CEO called personally to move up our meeting. We've been watching the news coverage, he explained, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd been burned badly and couldn't afford another mistake. If you can prove your software works as promised, we're prepared to discuss a significant contract. The meeting took place in Stone Corporation's executive boardroom, a gleaming space that screamed corporate power and serious money. 8 executives sat around a polished conference table, their expressions ranging from skeptical to desperate. These were people who'd bet $10 million on Marcus's promises and lost everything. Gentlemen, I began, connecting my laptop to their presentation system. You've heard a lot of claims about revolutionary supply chain software. Today, I'm going to show you what the real technology actually looks like. The demonstration that followed was 3 months of preparation compressed into 30 minutes of flawless execution. My software analyzed Stone Corporation's actual supply chain data in real time, identifying inefficiencies that Marcus's presentations had completely missed. Every calculation was transparent, every recommendation was backed by solid mathematics, and every result was immediately verifiable. "This is remarkable," whispered their chief operating officer, leaning forward to study the efficiency projections displayed on the screen. "Your software found cost savings we didn't even know existed. How is this possible?" 26 years of experience, I replied simply, and software that actually works instead of just promising results. But the real vindication came when Stone Corporation's technical team began asking detailed questions about algorithms, data processing methods, and integration requirements. Every answer I gave matched the documentation we'd prepared, the code I'd written, and the test results we'd generated over months of development. Stone Corporation's CEO exchanged glances with his colleagues before asking the question that would determine our future. "Mr. Allen, if we were to offer you a contract similar to what we had with Richmond Associates, could you deliver working software within 90 days? "Sir," I replied, opening another window on my laptop, "I can deliver working software right now. What you've just seen isn't a demonstration, it's your actual supply chain optimization system, running live on your data." The silence that followed was broken by spontaneous applause from Stone Corporation's technical staff. They understood what the executives were still processing, that my impossible software wasn't just theoretical, it was already solving their most pressing operational challenges. The contract negotiation took 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Stone Corporation agreed to a $5 million implementation contract with performance bonuses that could double the total value. More importantly, they agreed to serve as a reference client for other major corporations considering supply chain optimization. As we left Stone Corporation's headquarters with signed contracts and certified checks, Diana pulled me aside with a smile that mixed professional satisfaction with personal vindication. "Marcus Kane just called," she announced. "He wants to meet with you privately to discuss a resolution to your dispute." The irony was perfect. 3 months ago, Marcus had fired me and claimed my software was worthless. Now, with his career in ruins and his reputation destroyed, he was begging for a meeting with the man whose work had made him millions before destroying him completely. "What did you tell him?" I asked. "That you'd consider meeting with him," Diana replied, "but only if he publicly admits to stealing your intellectual property and apologizes for the damage he's caused." Marcus's response had been immediate and desperate. He'd agreed to a public apology, offered to testify about Richmond Associates' fraudulent practices, and even suggested that we could work together to rebuild both our careers. But the most satisfying part of his downfall wasn't his professional destruction or his public humiliation, it was the knowledge that his own arrogance had created every element of his defeat. If he'd simply accepted my software proposal at Wayne Enterprises, he could have shared credit for legitimate innovation. Instead, his greed and dishonesty had transformed my greatest professional setback into the foundation of his complete ruin. Stone Corporation's CEO called that evening with news that would change everything once again. "Word is spreading fast about your software," he explained. "3 other major corporations have contacted us asking for introductions. I think you're going to be very busy over the next few months." As I hung up the phone and looked around our garage headquarters, now bustling with activity, as my team prepared for rapid expansion, I realized that Marcus Kane had given me the greatest gift possible. His betrayal had freed me from corporate limitations, his theft had proven my software's value, and his public destruction had created the credibility we needed to build something extraordinary. The man who tried to steal my future had inadvertently handed me the keys to an empire, and Tomorrow he would learn exactly what that mistake was going to cost him. The phone call that shattered everything came at 7 in the morning, exactly 1 year after. Marcus Kane had destroyed my career and stolen my life's work. Diana's voice was shaking, with a rage I'd never heard before, and her first words hit me like a physical assault that left me gasping for air. "Marcus is suing you for $50 million, she announced, her legal composure cracking under the weight of what she'd discovered. But that's not the worst part. He's claiming that Gotham Solutions was built entirely on technology he developed while working at Wayne Enterprises, and he has documentation that appears to prove his case." My coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the kitchen floor as the implications crashed over me. Our company had grown to 150 employees and $3 million in revenue, with contracts from 12 major corporations. Everything we built, every life we changed, every innovation we created, Marcus was claiming it all belonged to him. "That's impossible," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I remembered Marcus's technical knowledge during his television interviews. He'd known details about my software that should have been impossible for someone who'd merely stolen presentations and concepts. "He's filed the lawsuit in federal court with a team of 20 lawyers," Diana continued, her voice getting tighter with each revelation. "But here's what's truly devastating: he has original code, samples, development notes, and technical specifications that predate your earliest files by 6 months. According to his documentation, you've been the thief all along." The accusation was so perfectly crafted, so impossibly detailed, that for a moment I questioned my own memories. 27 years of software development, and Marcus was claiming that every breakthrough, every innovation, every line of code had originated from his genius rather than my decades of experience. But the first plot twist came when Diana revealed the source of Marcus's newfound technical expertise. "He's been working with someone inside your old department at Wayne Enterprises," she explained, her voice dropping to a whisper that suggested surveillance and corporate espionage. "Someone who had access to all your original development files, your personal notes, and your backup systems." The betrayal cut deeper than anything Marcus had done because it came from people I'd trusted, colleagues I'd mentored, friends I'd helped build their careers. Someone in my old department was feeding Marcus information, giving him the ammunition he needed to destroy not just me, but everyone who'd followed me out of Wayne Enterprises. "Who?" I demanded, though part of me already suspected the answer would be worse than I could imagine. "Jennifer Walsh," Diana replied, and the name hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. "Wayne Enterprises' former legal counsel. The woman who defended you during Marcus's original suspension. She's been working with him for months, providing confidential files and helping him build a case that you've been stealing company property since the day you were hired." The second plot twist was even more devastating than the first. Jennifer Walsh hadn't just betrayed me, she'd been playing both sides from the beginning. Every legal strategy we'd discussed, every piece of evidence we'd gathered, every weakness in Marcus's case that she'd helped us identify had been shared with our enemy in real time. She recorded our conversations, Diana continued, her professional composure finally cracking completely. Every strategy session, every discussion about Marcus's vulnerabilities, every piece of evidence we thought was confidential, he's had access to it all. We've been fighting a war where the enemy knew our every move before we made it. The scope of the conspiracy was breathtaking in its complexity and cruelty. Marcus hadn't just stolen my software, he'd orchestrated a year-long campaign to gather evidence that would retroactively justify his theft. With Jennifer's help, he'd rewritten history itself, creating a narrative where I was the corporate spy and he was the legitimate innovator. But the third plot twist revealed the true depth of Marcus's revenge. "He's not just coming after you," Diana explained, her voice barely audible over the phone. "He's filed criminal charges against Victor, Barry, and Arthur for conspiracy to commit corporate espionage. If he wins this case, your entire team goes to prison for helping you steal his intellectual property." The realization that my friends and colleagues faced criminal prosecution because they'd believed in me was worse than any personal attack Marcus could have launched. These were good people who'd risked their careers to build something revolutionary, and now they faced federal prison sentences because I'd been naive enough to trust that truth and justice would prevail. My phone buzzed with urgent messages from my team, each one carrying worse news than the last. Victor reported that federal agents had seized his computers and questioned his family about our company's origins. Barry's marketing contracts had been canceled after clients received legal warnings about associating with accused corporate criminals. Arthur's wife had been interrogated at her workplace about her husband's alleged crimes. "There's more," Diana said, and I braced myself for revelations that would complete my destruction. "Marcus has convinced 3 of your current clients to file lawsuits claiming they were defrauded by stolen technology. Stone Corporation is reconsidering their contract, and the other potential clients are demanding proof that your software isn't built on Wayne Enterprises' intellectual property." The fourth and most devastating plot twist came when Diana revealed Marcus's endgame strategy. "He doesn't want money," she explained, her voice carrying the weight of someone who'd finally understood the true scope of our enemy's malice. "He wants to destroy you so completely that you can never recover. The $50 million lawsuit is designed to bankrupt you through legal fees, but the real goal is getting you convicted of federal crimes and sent to prison." The plan was elegant in its thoroughness and terrifying in its potential success. Marcus had spent a year building an airtight case that painted me as a career criminal who'd stolen company property, deceived investors, and defrauded clients. With Jennifer Walsh's inside information and forged documentation, he could present a narrative that was both compelling and nearly impossible to disprove. But as I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of my shattered coffee mug and contemplating the destruction of everything I'd built, something unexpected happened. Instead of despair, I felt the same cold clarity that had guided me through Marcus's original betrayal at Wayne Enterprises. "Diana," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos surrounding us. "Marcus made the same mistake this time that he made before. He underestimated what I'm capable of when I have nothing left to lose." The revelation that would save us came from an unexpected source: my own paranoia. For 27 years, I'd backed up everything, documented every decision, and maintained detailed records of my work. But after Marcus's first betrayal, I'd taken those habits to an obsessive level that even Diana hadn't known about. "I have recordings," I announced, pulling out a device that had been recording continuously in my home office for the past year. Every phone conversation, every strategy meeting, every discussion about our legal case, including Jennifer Walsh's private calls with Marcus where she admitted to stealing confidential files and fabricating evidence. Diana's gasp was audible over the phone. "You recorded our attorney-client conversations?" "I recorded everything," I replied, already uploading files to secure servers that Marcus couldn't touch, including Jennifer's confession that Marcus paid her $2 million to sabotage our defense and provide him with the information he needed to frame us for corporate espionage. The evidence was overwhelming in its completeness and devastating in its implications. Jennifer Walsh had violated attorney-client privilege, participated in criminal conspiracy, and helped fabricate evidence for a federal lawsuit. Her recorded admissions would not only destroy Marcus's case but expose the entire conspiracy for what it truly was. But the most satisfying revelation came when I played Diana the recording of Marcus's most recent call to Jennifer. In his arrogance and desperation, he'd revealed something that changed everything we thought we knew about his motivations. "I don't care about the money," Marcus's voice crackled through the speakers, filled with a hatred that was almost palpable. "I want Alan destroyed because he represents everything I could never be. 26 years of honest work, genuine innovation, and real accomplishment. I've spent my entire career stealing other people's success because I was never capable of creating anything myself." His confession was a masterpiece of psychological revelation, exposing not just his crimes but the deep insecurity and self-loathing that had driven him to destroy others rather than build something of his own. Marcus Kane wasn't just a corporate thief, he was a man so consumed by his own inadequacy that he dedicated his life to destroying people who reminded him of his failures. Diana's response was immediate and decisive. "We're going on the offensive," she announced, her legal instincts taking over as she processed the implications of what we discovered. Jennifer Walsh will be disbarred and criminally prosecuted. Marcus will face federal charges for conspiracy, fraud, and perjury. And every company he's defrauded over the past decade will have grounds for massive lawsuits. The next week became a blur of media interviews, legal filings, and corporate meetings as the truth about Marcus Kane's decade-long crime spree exploded across business publications and social media. The man who'd positioned himself as an innovative consultant was exposed as a serial fraudster whose entire career had been built on stolen work and destroyed lives. But the most unexpected development came when Wayne Enterprises' current CEO called to offer me something I'd never anticipated: Marcus's old position as head of their technology division, along with a formal apology and a $10 million settlement for the damages his theft had caused. "We've completed our investigation," the CEO explained during our meeting in the same boardroom where Marcus had first humiliated me. Marcus Kane stole intellectual property worth over $50 million during his tenure here, and we want to make things right with the people he victimized. The offer was tempting, but as I looked around the corporate boardroom that had once represented the pinnacle of my professional ambitions, I realized that Marcus's betrayal had given me something far more valuable than any corporate position could provide. "Thank you," I replied, standing to shake hands with executives who'd once dismissed my innovations as impossible dreams. "But I already have a job. Gotham Solutions just signed contracts worth $15 million, and we're planning to expand internationally." As I walked out of Wayne Enterprises for what I knew would be the final time, my phone buzzed with a message that brought everything full circle. Marcus Kane, facing federal criminal charges and complete professional ruin, wanted to meet with me one last time. The message was short but carried the weight of a man who'd finally understood the true cost of his choices. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need to ask you something that's been haunting me every day since this began. After everything I've done to you, after all the lives I've destroyed trying to steal what you created, how do you sleep at night knowing you could have been just like me?" His question revealed the final, devastating truth about our entire conflict. Marcus hadn't just been fighting me, he'd been fighting the constant reminder that success could be earned through honest work rather than stolen through betrayal. My existence had been a daily torment for someone who'd chosen the easy path of theft over the difficult journey of genuine accomplishment. But as I drove home to celebrate with my team, knowing that our company was about to become one of the most successful technology firms in the country, I realized that Marcus Kane had unwittingly given me the greatest gift possible. His betrayal had forced me to discover what I was truly capable of when I stopped accepting other people's limitations and started building something worthy of my actual potential. The man who'd tried to steal my future had inadvertently created an empire, and now he would spend the rest of his career watching that empire grow while contemplating the question that would haunt him forever: what kind of success could he have achieved if he'd chosen creation over destruction?